Thank you, Provost Canfield. That I'm taking notes. As you can see, people are clapping, right? And so we're going to move forward, but really trying to capture what you talked about, because I think it leads us to our first panel around agency, around connection, around values, and our care for our work, right? And so when we were planning ease, we all agreed that it was so critical to hear from our undergraduate scholars and have the opportunity for me to serve as just the moderator, but definitely highlighting their stories and their journey. And as you all know, self-authorship is huge. Storytelling, I value. And so we're going to go move to our first panel, which is the student panel. And again, thank you, Provost Campfield, for that. So now I would like the student panel to introduce yourself, and we can go in order of with Danny, Robert, Gisele, Mindy, and Thea. If you can introduce yourself, your year, major, also your pronouns if you're comfortable, and also if you're comfortable sharing your identities that you hold, and where are you joining us from? Are you in Merced? Are you at home? Are you right? And I also know, and we are all mindful that you're recovering from finals, so deep thank you for that one. But hopefully this is a space where you can find some peace, right? As you are in good company. So I'll turn it over to Danny.
Awesome. Thank you. And good morning to everyone. I'm really excited to be here. My name is Danielle Gasper on the Zoom, but please feel free to call me Danny. Folks call me that. I utilize she, her, hers pronouns. I'm entering my fourth year as an economics major with a double minor in natural science education and psychology. I identify as a proud first generation Filipinx American from the Bay Area, and that's where I'm zooming from right now. And then I would like to hand it off to my peers.
Well, I guess I'll go next since I'm next on the list. Hi, everybody. My name is Robert Garcia. My pronouns are he, him, his, and él. And my major is sociology, and I'm here from the beautiful Pacific Beach in San Diego, California. So I'm all the way over here, but I do miss Merced. And some of the identities I hold, I would say that I am a gay man, also someone that is pro rights, pro choice, pro everything. And I will also say that I'm Latino, and some of the many identities that I hold is so diverse because, in the sense that one identity for me is never enough. It's always a mixture of different identities, different things I'm interested, different things I believe in, different things I love. And once, so one of the questions, I'm looking at the questions to make sure I answer everything. I'm sorry for the so tell us a time you felt seen. I would say a time that I felt seen during the classroom experiences when professors will say, will teach us something, and then they'll ask us to connect it to like our real life experiences, and they actually listen, because a lot of times professors are like, share with your partners, and then we'll never get back to sharing with the whole classroom or sharing with the professor. So I always felt seen when professors will actually come back and ask if anybody wants to share their experiences or ideas, because I feel that's when me and also many other students feel seen and feel represented, because we're not always listening to like one narrative. It's always different perspectives, different opinions, different views. I always appreciate.
Thanks, Robert. Gisele?
Hello, everyone. It's really good to see you all, and thank you all for joining us this lovely Wednesday morning. My name is Gisele. I go by pronouns she, her, and ella. I'm joining you guys live from beautiful Merced, California. So super excited to be here. And the identities I hold go from being a proud Latina first generation woman. I do identify as bisexual, and I'm super happy to be super out here and super free. So definitely those are a few of the identities I hold, because I feel like that's just how I would like to be seen and how I feel comfortable being seen. So yeah, so that's a little bit about me, and I will pass it on to my fellow colleagues.
We have Mindy.
All right. Good morning, everyone. So my name is Mindy Fernandez. I use she, her pronouns. I just finished my third year, majoring in biological sciences with an emphasis in immunology and microbiology, and a minor in natural sciences education. I am a first-generation immigrant from the Philippines, and I'm also an aspiring scientist and educator. Most of the time, I spend most of my time in Merced, but currently I'm back home in Bellflower, California.
And Thea?
Hi, everybody. My name is Thea Serino. I am a rising third year psychology major and a public health minor. I use she, her, hers pronouns. I'm a Filipino American. I live in the Bay Area, but I'm currently visiting my grandparents in Las Vegas. So that's where I'm coming from right now. Yeah. Thank you.
Great. So yeah, so our we'll start our panel and the questions, right? And Robert alluded to this. If you all can respond to, tell us about a time where you felt seen and heard in the classroom, right? Where you were felt seen and heard in the classroom. Danny?
Yeah, I can start off. I definitely had some time to think about this question in particular because I try to pinpoint certain scenarios or certain experiences that I've had, but I definitely had a lot in my K through 12 experience. Usually in the STEM field, I entered UC Merced as a STEM major and I switched to economics. However, I got that inspiration because of my K through 12 experience. A lot of the educators that I encountered in my high school experience were people of color, and I felt so seen in that aspect that I can do it if I wanted to pursue that career path. They really honed in on connecting with students in the human connection more than just curriculum. My teachers really wanted to emphasize that we are people first, and I really see that in my work as a social justice coordinator at the Office of Social Justice. Really connecting with our students first is really important. And I don't see that much in our higher education, but I definitely see opportunities for growth with our educators, knowing that there's a lot of you here wanting to learn more about the student experience. And so I definitely seen more human connection during my K-12 experience.
Great. And we'll go over with Gisele.
So for me, I definitely also thought about this question for quite a bit. I do want to say during my time here at UC Merced, I kind of seen different dynamics and different scenarios where I've had lectures that were really big that professors don't really conduct group conversations, or it's just strictly lecture but not super welcoming or super human, that you feel like I matter, I'm just kind of like another number in the class kind of scenario. But in more recent times, being virtual, I saw more professors putting more effort to just kind of like connect with students and be human. And I thought an example of this was like when I took a cultural psychology course, the professor definitely put in such a great effort of not only acknowledging student participation, but acknowledging the fact that we're students, we struggle, we're balancing jobs, some of us have families. And I just loved how it's just kind of like that visibility, and also just kind of like being like reassured that you are present, but you are also being thanked for your presence because you're taking time out of your day to learn. I felt was so valuable because I was not only seen, I was also acknowledged that my participation is valid, my presence is valid, that I am valid as a person. So I definitely appreciated that, because I feel like when that is seen, I felt more comfortable going to the professor's office hours than I would on a normal school day. So yeah, definitely human and being down to earth is super helpful, because when you are seen, it builds a lot of connection and confidence that you can do it and get through it because you have a support system. And yeah,
Right. Thanks, Gisele. Right. I think that's the critical piece, right, of that connection, right? And it's really, really authentic. Okay, we'll have Mindy.
Hi, yes. Yeah, like my other peers, I really had to think hard about this question, but um it was like my answer was super simple. Like my professor just said, just made a simple gesture of acknowledging, that everyone is struggling during this pandemic with struggling with their mental health, the social and political climate that we're in. And um, that professor just decided, hey, let's take a break this week. We'll move the deadline of our assignment next week and focus on your mental health this week or check in with a family member. And it really resonated with myself and my classmates that someone was listening when they were checking in with us and, wanted to do something about it. But the sad reality is that not all classes have the capacity to just take a break for a week, stop instruction, and move everything. So I feel like there are ways to do that in all kinds of classes. But yeah, super simple gestures like that really help make me feel seen and heard in a classroom.
Right. And it's almost like fresh of breath, or it's just a good feeling, right? Like when they acknowledge it, right? Okay, and so now we have Thea.
Thank you. Yeah, similar to my peers, I thought about a professor I had this past semester. During their class, they wouldn't just teach us material just to do well on exams. They would emphasize that education isn't about memorizing material just to pass a class, but rather it provides you with tools that can help you succeed. And they made me feel like they really cared about us, not only as students, but also as individual human beings. And they taught us lessons that could be used outside the classroom and incorporated personal stories throughout the semester. One story that really stood out to me was when she talked about how her parents immigrated from Korea to the United States to give her a better life. And hearing her story really made me feel connected to her. And it made me think about my own grandparents and my mom and how they immigrated from the Philippines and hoped to provide the family with opportunities to have an amazing life. And the other time I felt seen and heard was when I took an ethnic studies course about the Filipino American history. And the professor herself was a first generation Filipino American, and she'd incorporate many of her own personal anecdotes as to what it was like growing up as a Filipino American. And I found that I could really relate to her in a lot of ways. And to be able to hear about my own cultural history within the classroom truly made me feel seen and heard, especially since during my education from K through 12 in history books, my culture's history would only be talked about in tiny chunks. So that just goes to show how representation is really more important than we realize.
Great. Thank you, Thea. And again, like as Provost Canfield said, it is those connections, and as a little flicker that they are, right? Like it gets brighter when you make those connections. Okay, Robert, you're next.
Okay, so for me, I would say, just like Danny and all my fellow peers, at my K through 12 experience, I did feel seen throughout my teachers and fellow peers because I went through a prominent Latino elementary, middle school, and high school, and usually it was a mixture of Latino kids and teachers I would be teaching. So I always felt represented that way. But at UC Merced, I felt complete difference in representation because not only did many teachers, like at the end of their syllabus, which I never heard of until coming to UC Merced, teachers will put like all those resources like mental health resources, emergency resources that you never seen, or when you hear through high school or you see those YouTube videos that says read the syllabus, but they never mention how they leave resources for you. And I always felt that was important because they care about you for first and foremost. And also I would say that what I appreciate is that the diversity of classes that we have here. So I like taking CRES classes. I like taking sociology classes. A third year sociology major, I have a lot of opportunities to take different courses. So sometimes I'll take courses that center around the African American community, center around the Asian American community, and so forth, because it allows me to like learn about the importance of diversity and to listen to like other stories and other points of view throughout the world. But also what I appreciate when we feel seen is when professors will always mention ask a question, because that's a key thing that we feel like it's a dumb thing to do sometimes, because sometimes you feel like, I don't know if I should ask this question because I feel like I feel dumb to ask it, or maybe everybody else knows and I'm just too dumb to ask it. But when professors emphasize, just ask the question, because sometimes you don't know that other people are struggling. And when they create a safe environment where people could ask questions and not feel like rejected, that the question might be dumb, it allows more opportunities to be seen, because not only you're asking a question, but you're also building a foundation and relationship with the teacher.
Great, thanks, Robert. And right, like I think that's the other critical piece, right? Of if you're seeing it, right, that again, representation matters in all forms, right? Whether it be in person or in the syllabus, that it's very inclusive, right? And that's one of the themes of EASE, is that learning invitation piece. Okay, so kind of got creative on these two questions. If you can finish this sentence. The way my instructors have best supported me in my learning is. So finish this sentence. The way my instructors have best supported me in my learning is.
Okay.
Danny?
I kind of want to, yeah. So the way my instructors have best supported me in my learning, especially at UC Merced, is just being accessible outside of the times that they have listed on their office hours. Like Gisele mentioned before, like we as students may have a lot of things going on, working a lot of jobs, maybe have a family to take care of. Personally, I work a lot and I can't have that responsibility of going to their structured office hours, but having them offer time outside of that really helps me succeed, especially if I'm really struggling in a class. I took advantage of this in my sophomore year. I was really struggling with math. I've always been struggling with math. And this was my first time reaching out to a professor and really asking for that help, because it was the lowest of my lows in my undergraduate years. And they were able to meet with me every Friday outside of their office hours, because they made time for me and made me feel seen and important enough so that they can try their best to make me succeed. I didn't do well in that class overall, but the help that they provided me really, really made a difference in what I wanted to do with my career. So just being able to go outside of their office hours, which can be a lot because professors also have their own share in life. So just being able to communicate the needs that we have and acknowledge them was really important.
That's great. Thanks, Danny. And now we'll go to Robert.
Okay, so the way instructors have best supported me in my learning is being accessible, just like Danny, in the sense that a lot of times you're just confused on what you're confused about in the class. Sometimes you don't even know what you're confused. Sometimes you're just like, I read all this, I'm confused, but I don't know what to ask. And having an accessible professor is really helpful, because sometimes you can't go to office hours. Life happens, and sometimes you have a class during their office hours. So being accessible, allowing students to email their professors when they have questions or stuff. Or sometimes I remember my writing one teacher during my freshman year made everybody in their first month make an appointment with them. And it was interesting because we were just like, why do we need to make an appointment? But it gave us the courage to like understand that we might not need help, but we need to know like where the teacher's at when they're in their office hours. How can we make an appointment? And like it was just a practice office hours appointment. And by doing that, it gave me the courage to actually meet with that professor several times, because it showed me how easy it was to make an appointment with them, or just go to their office hours in general and ask some questions about things that I was confused about, but I didn't know how to phrase it or like email it to them. So when you have a very communicative teacher or professor, or TA for a matter of fact, because TAs, they also do a fair share of the work when it comes to teaching. and having that easy, oh, can I meet with you at this time? Or do you have another time that's works that's not during your office hours because of X, Y, and Z? And having those resources open to everybody allows people to like understand what they're confused about, how they could do better. And sometimes those little helpful moments inspires not teachers, professors and students alike to maybe change the way they teach or change the career trajectory, because sometimes just as much we learn from teachers, teachers also learn a lot from us in the way we learned and the way teaching skills might work for some students versus others.
Great. Yep. Thank you, Robert. Right. All the different ways of how those learning skills. Gisele?
So, to finish off the sentence, because I'm kind of like mind blank, to finish off the sentence, I feel like what's been really valuable and helpful to my education that professor has done, kind of following off of Danny, has been just accessibility of office hours. I think that was super important just because knowing that I'm also like working and also balancing any extracurriculars outside of like the designated office hours, sometimes those can conflict. So definitely when professors make time outside of their own office hours to just help me with a question or clarify something that may not have been super clear in lecture, or maybe I'm just overthinking, really does help, because it shows that not only I'm being supported, but it shows how much they want me to succeed as a student. So definitely just having that accessibility and having professors just kind of like make time for you and get to see you in that way of like, I'm helping you and I want to see you succeed, really helped push me to just finish my classes in like the best possible way I could, because I know that I have someone there that's supporting me all the way, and it really just helps me try a little more and just put a little more work into it, because sometimes it may not seem like, when you're putting in work in the class, it doesn't seem like much, but when you have that extra support, you do notice a difference and you do notice a change in your work ethic. You put in a change in the way you study and the way you kind of perceive the class. And I feel like it definitely results in a better outcome, because you did show that student that you care, that you have support, and that you really want them to succeed. So it acts like a motivator. So I definitely enjoy when professors do make that time for students.
Great. Thanks, Gisele, right? That making time, making space, right? It may be a small act, but very, very powerful. So yeah, we'll go with Mindy. If you can finish the sentence of the way my instructors have best supported me in my learning is.
Yeah. One of the ways that I prefer my professors to support me in my learning is to just allow for opportunities to make up missed assignments, or give extra credit, because as students, sometimes we're caught up in all of these things, all of our classes, life, and we just need a little bit more time to review the lesson so that we get a better grade on the quiz, but yeah, just a little bit more time to do this assignment to make it better. And I feel like just allowing that opportunity to take a test or do an extra credit to prove that you actually learned something in the class goes a long way, because like school can be very stressful and very overwhelming. And I've had professors say that, we're no curving, no extra credit. Like if you fail, you fail. You'll take it again. And I feel like there's no use just making the students feel scared of approaching you by saying that. So yeah, just being understanding and allowing for multiple opportunities to make up for assignments and stuff.
Great. Thank you, Mindy. Thea.
So the way my instructors have best supported me in my learning is when they would incorporate their own personal anecdotes to the subject, and they wouldn't just lecture on and on throughout the class period, but yeah, they rather throw in a personal story. Sometimes I feel like that barrier between student and instructor needs to be broken down in order to actually feel engaged with the subject and the class material. When I feel that there is a way that I can connect with an instructor, I am more engaged in my learning and I feel less intimidated to attend their office hours and to ask them questions.
Great. Thank you. And I'm seeing in the chat, Carrie, if you don't mind, I will read your comment because I think it's very, very important for all of us. It says, Carrie shares, incorporating life happens policies into the course structure to accommodate things without the need for students to justify accommodation is one of the best pieces of advice I've gotten from a colleague, right? So yeah, we do know that life happens, right? And so for us to be supported in all areas, and part of the collection of the our panels are, they also have co-curricular activities. That's one way I've gotten to know our panelists. So, but thank you for that, Carrie, and your comment. Okay, now we'll go to the second one, same thing, right? If you can finish this sentence. Here's what I wish my instructor knew about me and my learning needs. So here's what I wish my instructor knew about me and my learning needs. Danny.
Yeah, so I wish my instructors acknowledged something about me and my learning needs is that my intersectional identity plays a huge role in the way I approach my learning, the way I study, and just the overall mentality I enter the classroom with. There's a lot of events happening around the world, happening to my community, happening to the communities around me that really contribute to how I perform in the classroom. So I feel as if instructors and TAs also go through the same things, like we're consuming the same type of media in some form. And so being able to acknowledge that there's things around the world that we need to address in the classroom is really important to me. And it makes me feel seen, just combining all the questions together, that being able to talk about things that happen around the world, things that affect the communities that are in the classroom is really important because it shows that we have that human connection and that it's not just about studying, it's not about the curriculum. The better we understand each other, the better I can learn. So being able to talk about those things and acknowledge that we might need some time to heal, we might need some time to talk about it, and it's okay to take a pause from this lecture or this discussion, because it's much more important to know where my mental capacity is so I can get all the information that you're trying to feed me. So I wish that my intersectional identity played a huge role in the way we approach learning.
Absolutely, absolutely, right? I think stuff happens, right? Be it in our campus, locally, nationally, globally, right? That has an impact in terms of how we are doing, and then I appreciate in terms of what you mentioned, Danny, on that mental wellness piece, right? And it's as easy as acknowledging what's happening. Okay, we'll go with Robert.
Okay, I would say one thing I wish my professors and teachers would know is my learning style. So in many sense, throughout my whole K through 12 journey, it was always look at what the teacher is writing on the board, remember it, and then just like hopefully you took the whatever they were on the board as notes, and then remember it so when you take the test, you got it. But what I appreciate that teachers now going through my upper education is that a lot of them will actually ask students. So there's like 3 main ways you could learn something: visually, physically, and like reading something. So what I appreciate is that teachers are incorporating a mixture of all 3 and allow the student like me to learn the material more and embrace it more, because sometimes reading it from the book or having making forced readings for students. So in the sense that you make them read and then the next day they're supposed to know everything from what that reading, it just makes it harder for you to understand because there's so much reading. But what I appreciate is when teachers will be like, okay, everybody that read, let's just go over a bit. They'll go through like a mini lecture, the review of the reading. So it starts allowing me to understand the reading more because maybe you read it in one way. And then when the teacher explains it, you're just like, oh, so that's what it means. Because sometimes when teachers say, hey, everybody, did you do the reading? Okay, talk to me. What's the reading about? It makes it very difficult because sometimes you think you read it wrong. So then you don't want to share. And then there's always awkward silence. So then when teachers incorporate like mini reviews, here's a visual way of understanding what you read last night or something like that, allows students to like understand the work and understand that sometimes reading is not for everybody. Sometimes you need to have visuals. Sometimes you need to interact with fellow students because sometimes the best thing is to like jog ideas off of your peers because sometimes saying this is what I understood from the reading and then your peer like that's what I understood, but also did you catch this? And it creates an environment where it's safer for someone to actually talk and discuss because they don't feel shy, they don't feel like they're wrong. It feels like it's a learning experience, and that's the key when it comes to having these types of lectures, is that you're learning, not you're memorizing. You're learning what's new about the topic, what's new around the world. And that's what I appreciate when teachers actually acknowledge the different learning styles we have around the classroom.
Thanks, Robert. Right, like that goes back to Provost Canfield talking about that, like owning your agency, right, and as a collective, right, we are learning through each other. Okay, so now we will have Gisele.
Hello, everyone again. So one thing I wish my professors knew more about my learning style would be kind of like being aware that mental health does get rough. And I just speak from just kind of like having those like very late night study sessions or just having that breakdown of like it's too much or there's just so much going on and feeling overwhelmed with there's a midterm, there's a paper, there's an event happening that same week that it's sometimes can affect the performance of students. So I feel like just acknowledging that mental well-being is something that's fair for all students, including myself, and just kind of like acknowledging the fact that there is time to take breaks. There is time to just take a minute to pause and take a minute to just recenter and be okay. And I feel like not a lot of professors kind of mention that in lecture, just have kind of like, I know for one of my classes I used to have, before every exam, the professor would always just tell us like, all right, y'all, before we even start, we're gonna take a minute to just breathe and do some small exercises to relax, because I know everybody here seems very stressed out. I feel that energy, but we're gonna get through it. So I love Tashi was just kind of like acknowledging our mental wellness and was like, whatever happens after today happens, but after this, I want you all to just shut off your brain, take a break, relax, and do something that makes you feel happy, because your mental well-being is first, because you are a person. So I definitely feel like when you acknowledge mental health and also like pointing out like resources or doing little useful activities that help students feel a little calmer really does make a difference in like not only academic performance, but also just like academic interaction with other students as well as professors overall.
Right. Thanks, Gisele. And right, I think because of we are in a pandemic, we are telecommuting, right? We had to shift and pivot, as we've heard that word many times, right? But hopefully that those experiences are will be transferred, right, and adapted to the classroom environment. Okay, we'll have Mindy.
Hi. So one thing that's really important about my learning needs, especially as a woman of color in STEM classes that's almost always, male dominated, is just creating a space that's inclusive and safe to learn and to, explore different ideas, different lessons to learn. And in some of my bio classes, the topics that always resonated with me are lectures about diseases and disorders that affect specific people or specific endemic regions, or affect a specific population. And it's really important to talk about, the history behind that. Why is it like that? And, sometimes my professors say, we're not going to talk about the history because we're not testing on it. I feel like that's not a way to approach something. And yeah, just like integrating that into the class makes me feel like I'm in an environment that acknowledges, people of color.
Great. That's awesome. Thank you, Mindy. And Thea?
Thank you. So my answer is similar to Gisele's. I've had multiple discussions with lots of my peers about this, and something we wish our instructors were more mindful about is our mental health. Sometimes the workload can be a bit too much, and they seem to often forget that we're not just taking their class, but also other classes on top of working jobs and participating in extracurriculars. I had some instructors who expect us to always bring 100% of ourselves, and sometimes we aren't in the capacity to do so. I think as a society, we've been taught to fake it until you make it on your bad days. But sometimes you just can't do that, and it's important to acknowledge that and be able to adapt to that.
Right. And I'm also monitoring the chat, and thank you, Provost Campfield, about that making meaning, right? Meaning making, that when that happens, there's just more, I think for me, the way I see it is there's that connect piece and the value piece that when we approach that piece. Okay, let's see. Okay, if you can think back on your first semester, what advice would you give yourself to be successful in your academics? And also what you know now, what would you say to your younger self, right? In your first semester at UC Merced?
Well, can I go? Because I have it. I would
go for it, Robert.
I would say to remember that education's everything, but it shouldn't be everything for you. So in the sense that it shouldn't kill you just to get your education. That's all you focus on. During my first year, what happened was that like my second week of school, tragically, my mom passed away. So I was like excited for school and everything, and that tragedy happened. So I went back home, and I came back, it was like 2 weeks later. And what I did was that I just enveloped myself in my education. So I didn't do anything fun. I didn't do anything for my mental health. I just only focused on education. That's what I did to like basically numb my emotions and like ignore that tragic moment in my life, because I was like, I had to finish school. I had to keep going. I can't just drop out here just because this happened. But it took me to like my second year, my spring semester, when a teacher actually told us, before we do anything in class, we're gonna have a mindful moment. And I was like, what? And I was so confused, because they're like, okay, everybody close your eyes, take a minute, we're all just gonna breathe, we're all just gonna get through everything, but first we just need to focus on ourselves. And that's when I came to realize that sometimes we need to focus on ourselves. We need to like take care of ourselves. If we need to take that extra hour nap because it makes us feel better, we should do it, because in a sense that education shouldn't envelop you so much that that's all you are, because you're more than that. You're made of multiple identities, you're made of multiple stories, you're made of everything that makes you. And to only focus on education, that's good, but at the same time, it shouldn't overtake your life. That shouldn't be your single thing, because then education's over, what else you're gonna have? oh, my whole personality is education. No, you had to realize that sometimes your whole personality is education, it's your background, it's your history, it's your gender, it's anything that makes you you. You had to focus on that. And sometimes you just had to remember to take a mindful moment, take a minute for yourself and refocus everything who you are and basically push forward.
Right. Robert, thank you so much for sharing that. Right. Again, the way we process different things in our lives is impactful, right? Like, um, uh, whether it be co-curricular or academics, right? Like again, I think when scholars go into the classroom, it's not just parts of themselves; it's the whole self, right? And then also that critical moment about that self-reflection. And again, in the afternoon, I think the themes of ease are definitely coming through on this panel. Mindy, did you want to respond to thinking back on your first semester? What advice would you give yourself and to be successful in your academics?
Yes. The biggest thing that I learned was that you don't have to do it alone. You don't have to be so scared of your professors, of approaching them, or even your TAs and asking for help. Not knowing something does not mean that you failed. It just means that you have opportunities to grow. And it doesn't help if you're vulnerable once in a while to say, like, hey, I'm really struggling in this thing, because you never know. You might find a friend, a confidant, a mentor that can really help you succeed. And, or maybe someone who's in the same boat that understands you, and you can learn together and succeed together. So that's something that I would tell myself if I was a first year.
Right. Right. And again, part of that too, right, is this the power dynamics, right? And then I appreciate, yeah, I was scared of my professors, but that is again one of the themes in terms of liberatory teaching is really that when we go into the classroom, everybody is learning, right? And part of our community guidelines is that not everyone's an expert, that we're continuously learning. Any other panel members want to respond to the question? We have a little bit of time. Or we can move forward. I want to give you this opportunity to... Okay, so here's a good one. What advice, right? You are all our panel members, and then I call expertise. What advice would you share to incoming Bobcats and faculty?
I could start.
Okay.
UC Merced offers so much opportunities for its students, especially students of color and students who are underrepresented. And all you really have to do is to look for them and like write an essay or apply. It's the bare minimum to get these opportunities, and just take advantage of them, maximize all of it, because you're only here for 4 years, 5 years. So you should just make it all worth it. Maximize all of those opportunities, like professional opportunities, mentorship opportunities, everything. It's all helpful in the end.
Great. Thanks, Mindy. And Gisele?
So some advice I would give to incoming Bobcats and incoming faculty is, you have a place and you have a space here, and I feel like UC Merced is so unique for creating such amazing support systems and having so many individuals that are just very like-minded, but also just there's so much room for you to grow and learn, because as Mindy said earlier, just because you don't know anything doesn't mean that you're dumb. It just means that you have room to grow. It just means that you're expanding your horizons on your knowledge. And so I definitely would say that the experience at UC Merced is what you make of it, and it's one that truly is super transformative, is one that will can proceed to like whatever you learn, you can continue to apply moving forward. And I think that's a very unique takeaway that not a lot of students can do after they graduate. So definitely the skills, the mentorships, the friendships, and like the bonds that students do create with one another on campus as well as faculty really does translate to the campus community that we have, that's very open and very welcoming to learning, and just taking the time to see what we can do better and how we can continue growing and how we can transform, because there's always room to transform, there's always room to grow, and there's always room to just change the way you think and the way that you see things moving forward.
Great. Thank you, Gisele. Great. Any other members want to respond to the question and advise? Yeah, Robert?
Yeah. So an advice I would give is to explore. So when I came to UC Merced, it was a lot of let me just find my little posse, let me find my groups, and then we'll just survive through UC Merced together. That's the plan. But when you explore and you just learn everything, like I don't mean like physically explore, also mentally explore. Throughout my 3.5 years, because I'm an incoming 4th year at UC Merced, I never took the regular classes. So I never took classes like the history of blah, 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 the history of this. I never only took those classes. I diversify all the classes I would take, because it gave me opportunities to meet with different teachers. Sometimes they'll be in the STEM field, sometimes they'll be in the humanities field. Sometimes it creates great memories and creates great opportunities, because when you explore, you get to network, and when you network, you get to have connections, and when you have connections, it allows you to learn about the different opportunities you can have at UC Merced or outside campus. Because sometimes a professor or a fellow friend will be like, you know what, this position or this internship doesn't sound good for me, but it sounds good for you, you should check it out. And that's how you get like different positions. Like my current position as a student coordinator at the Office of Social Justice, it was because I was exploring my Fiat Lux website, because they're like, user resources, check it out. That's when my counselor, and that's when I found the position, and I was like, okay, this is perfect for me. Or how I took a class, it was sitting on man, it was African American history, but we learned through rapping. And a lot of people are like, why are you taking a class on rapping? And actually it was really fun, because not only it helped me like provide like lyricism, but also in a way taught me how to build an essay. Because they're like, rapping is like building an essay. You learn things, you explore things, you fix them together, you mesh them up, and you make something that's a beautiful work of art. So when you explore things, you get to learn new skills, new opportunities, new networking that will be useful down the line.
Yeah. Thanks, Robert. Right. Exploration, opens up doors, right, of what you like or may not like, or this gives you more passion in what you do, and how your values can complement that. And I also share with scholars that, it's this whole provocative inquiry, right? Like I always want to keep inquiring, because there's a wealth of knowledge at UC Merced. Okay, so we have 3 minutes left, and this is not a I got you moment, but we have a collective here, right? Folks who are very, very much invested in the themes of ease. What final comments would you like to say to our participants today? Danny?
Okay, sorry, I was confused if they were saying it or we were saying it.
No, you're saying it, yeah. What would you like to share with the panel, right? Because they're here, and it's a collective that is our values, right? Of again, changing the status quo, changing the classroom, and learning environments, right? So just an opportunity to share. Or any final comments you may have, and then we can go into the questions and comments, because the chat is live. There's a lot of stuff. It's very active. So
okay, thank you. Sorry, I just misunderstood. So something I want to leave off with, just being part of this initiative and this program, I just want to say thank you to the staff, faculty that are really trying to make our student voices shine. I struggled with the first question that was asked of when I felt seen or heard in the classroom, but in these spaces, I definitely feel heard and seen. I love UC Merced because of the staff and faculty that go the extra mile, that go the extra step to make sure that our stories are being told. So I'm really, really grateful to be part of this process.
Thanks, Danny. Others?
I'll go.
Okay.
Go ahead, Robert.
Okay, I would say same as Danny, thank you for all coming, to just listening to us, just for showing us that you value what we say and value what we do. But what I love and appreciate about UC Merced and all the staff is that you don't act like professors, you act like human beings that take the time to understand how we feel. At other campuses, I see and hear a lot of teachers just like very single-minded, very closed-minded, that they don't hear their opinion. And when I talk about my college experience to my friends who also go to different universities, they never understood how human it felt to have an education, because we tend to lose that aspect when we go to education, that we should be just books that like understand everything in our major. And what the professors here wonderfully showed us is that, yeah, it's great to be an expert in this, but it's also great to be human. It's also great to be empathy, because sometimes we forget to like love ourselves and love other people because we're just so narrow-minded. And to have the opportunity just to be human and just to appreciate everything is just wonderful. And I appreciate everything that y'all do for us.
Great, thanks, Robert. So we are at time, and to not close off this section, because again, this is an environment of learning, right? We heard from you around the importance of mental wellness, right? Taking that time to do some meaningful reflection, accessibility of staff and faculty, representation does matter, right? And that notion that students shouldn't be scared in that space, and how we can share our personal stories that connects us, right? And also how current events impacts us, and that life happens, and those mindful moments that we create in the classroom and out of the classroom. Exploration leads to opportunities, and for faculty and staff to take that extra mile, and again, that communication. So again, I just want to thank you all, for the panelists, for taking your time. I know you're coming off coming off finals week, and sharing your story and giving a glimpse of who you are and your UC Merced journey. I want to share a quote from Lena White. I think that also kind of goes back to the theme that Provost Canfield shared. I'm writing my story so that others might see fragments of themselves. I am writing my story so that others might see fragments of themselves. And so with that, I really want to thank you from the bottom of my heart, Danny, Thea, Gisele, Mindy, Robert, for sharing space with us, right? I think that your legacy lives because of the faculty and staff that are committed in changing UC Merced to be more inclusive, to be more, going beyond survival mode to thriving mode, right? And we are about to go on a break, but I want to coin it in terms of a pause, right? And also, you can come in and out of the showcase, but when we use this pause, I want to do a call in, right? I want to put a challenge for us and reflect from our amazing panelists. What came up for you, right? Something that clicked, right? Or something new that you heard. And then this one is, what ways can we incorporate storytelling and the power to be seen in all spaces at UC Merced? So we will be taking a break, right? At noon. But so just want to putting it out there, thanking the panelists, but an opportunity also for the participants. If you have any questions, please write them down into the chat, or if you are comfortable turning on your video and sharing your comments and questions.
Hey, Olnar, quick question. Do we have an opportunity for some of our attendees to ask some questions to our amazing panelists?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
if you based
So
off of what you heard, feel free to drop any questions in the chat, raise your hand, and we do have some time to answer any thoughts, reactions, comments you might have to share with our panelists today.
Just one thought, if I might. A huge thank you, and I hope all 5 of you look at the chat that you generated. I mean, you've got us all charged. So thank you very much for your candor and your enthusiasm.
Thanks, Greg.
Go ahead, Dr. Menke. I see your hand in the leaves.
Okay.
Sorry. Hi there. So thank you, panelists, for sharing. It's really helpful. And I teach in the sciences. I teach these large classes. I like to incorporate a lot of these things. There's this. It's a struggle to balance encouraging you to persevere and push through, and also to step back and take care of yourselves. Mm-hmm. Do you have any advice for how faculty can express that to you? We don't know the details of your lives, but how can we be sensitive to that without getting in your business? So how can we balance that way of encouraging you to push through and to strive that you've got that resilience, and also to step back and take care of yourselves?
I can answer to the best of my ability. Hello. But I feel like for students, a way that faculty can kind of approach that would be kind of like setting up like little remindful quotes, like even before lecture, like have a quote up for students to read, just to kind of like get a sense of empowerment. Taking a minute of like mindfulness as well also helps, because I feel like when you remind students after like lectures over, like the last 5 minutes of lecture, like, hey, before you all go, make sure this weekend you guys take a few minutes off to do something that makes you feel good, that makes you feel happy. It's good to take like a nice little mental break. I feel is also a nice way to kind of approach it, because I feel like sometimes I know it can get a little awkward, but I feel like just taking like small little steps of like creating like little slides that kind of share words of encouragement, or just taking those last 5 minutes of lecture to share those words of encouragement on your own and just give those little reminders really does make a difference, and really does kind of like show that you're like helping them like want to persevere through, but also helping them remember that they are humans, that they're allowed to take breaks as well.
Great, thank you. I love that that's actually actionable, that I can really put that into action for all my classes. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I would also say to remind students that who are taking your class that that sometimes they're not like STEM majors or they're not humanities majors, because sometimes we have to take classes that are for a requirement, but that are not in our field. So sometimes we feel like we're just like that's not our field, like we're not going to understand. So to acknowledge like, hey, I know this might be difficult because this is a STEM class and you might be a humanities major, but you got this. We like little reminders like that, and be like, I'm open for office hours, but don't make it in a sense like office hours if you have questions. Just like office hours if you're confused about something or you just want to hang out, because sometimes getting to know the student allows them to be more comfortable at asking you questions, because it's a lot about being comfortable with the student. Because sometimes the student might not feel comfortable, and just like bring humanistic tendencies to discussions and lectures. Like if you're doing STEM, I remember how my professor will be like, hey, everybody, you know what? I'm going to play some music, like 5 minutes to get everybody moved, pumped up. Send me any suggestions through an email or something, and you might hear your song, and like gets people pumped up because it feels like their opinion is valued and is heard. Because sometimes you're just like, this is not my field, how am I going to get through this? And just casually reminding students, hey, you're just a student, it's fine, we'll get through this together. If you're confused, just come hang out with me during office hours, we'll probably figure something out like that.
Cool, thanks.
Right.
Yeah, it's always more fun when students come to office hours.
Yeah.
And also we have a question in the chat. I will read from Colleen. I had a question to students: what helps best with scheduling times with professors outside of the office hours? I make this open, but not a lot of students take advantage. Or of the office hours will be empty. Is it easier in person? I do say anyone is welcome and ask questions, even non-course related events. Thoughts and comments on that?
I can start if that's okay.
Yeah.
So one of my professors, and I think this was like a great idea, is that they always stayed after class, like right after class, they stayed for like in the class. If it was vacant, they stayed in the class. If not, they just walked to the lantern, and students would walk with them and ask questions. And then, what happens is that after 2 hours, the professors just surrounded by students working on problems in the lantern, and they're hanging out. Of course, it's so much easier in person, but I thought that being able to make that connection with the professor, just hanging out in the lantern, asking about school class topics was really great. And it's not like an official office hours, but just making yourself available like that was super accessible and super easy for the students to just feel welcome.
Thanks, Mindy. Any other comments?
Okay, I was gonna say, usually when you're gonna be busy. So the professors know this is their schedule for the week. So sometimes if you give like a reminder in the class and say, yes, these are my office hours Wednesday from like 12 to 1, but I'm usually available all day Wednesday. I'm usually available at this time. So like if you want to come to office hours, you could just like show up or just email me to give me a heads up that I should be waiting for you in my office hours. And that really helps students like get comfortable, but also encourage students to, if you have a TA, to go to their TA's office hours, because sometimes the student will be nervous to ask you a question, but they won't be nervous to ask the TA a question. And I feel like as long as they go to a office hours and get their questions answered, that's the end goal, that they get what they're confused about resolved. And I think that's like one of the really great ways. Like a professor will like say, yes, my office hours are from like 12 to 1 Wednesday, but today I'm actually free from 12 to like 3 or 12 to 4. So if you want to just show up, I'll be in my office, probably eating lunch. You can eat lunch with me, and then we could just answer any questions you have. And yeah.
Great, thanks. Okay, we have one more. We have time for one more question. From Jason Emery. Can you think of one specific assignment from your coursework that allowed for you to express or discuss aspects of your identity to the instructor, or otherwise make you feel like the course content is relevant to your immediate lives?
I kind of wanted to answer this when I was reading it earlier. I recently this semester took a psych class for the first time at UC Merced. I've never taken a psychology class before, and it was very interesting. The way that my professor handled the curriculum, it was asynchronous, but I felt so connected with my professor because there was opportunities for quizzes that weren't quizzes. These quizzes were just us talking about what's happening in our lives going through this pandemic, and really finding ways to connect the curriculum that we've learned into the lives that we're experiencing right now. So at first I was confused if I was going to be graded on these things because it was named a quiz, but she was able to respond after all the quizzes were submitted, and we had individual responses or feedback, not feedback, but she responded to our stories and really made us feel seen. She was connecting with us on different levels and asking if there's time outside of class or in your schedule to meet. So just being able to put assignments in there that isn't graded, but allows us to explore and discuss things that are happening in our lives, and you actually reading it really makes a difference. And especially in this virtual world, typing it all out really helped instead of verbally saying it, because the Zoom burnout is real. So it was really interesting, and I feel like there's a lot of opportunities for Shaw or STEM professors to incorporate that aspect of a quiz, but not a quiz, and just allowing us to speak.
Great. And on that note, thank you so much.